Welcome to all of you for this interesting discussion that we are now going to have on breadth of skills assessment in our breakout. Welcome to all of you who have joined us in this discussion. Let me introduce the context in which we are going to talk about this issue today. As we know that the cumulative impact of a global and pandemic that we have seen unfolding among us over the last 2 years, emerging future of work and cutting edge research on what constitutes a successful education system, all these things has compelled education policy makers to revisit, review, and more often than not, reimagine the education system we are currently nurturing. Uh, Traditionally, I'm sure you'll agree with me that assessment in schools have focused on testing students' knowledge, grasp core concepts, and sometimes application of those concepts. Assessment of skills has largely been either a peripheral or procedural outcome instead of an intentional focus point. However, with changing times and rapid evolution of what is relevant in the economy, stagnating student learning in age-old practices like knowledge-based assessment would be detrimental for them at multiple levels. It is therefore imperative and indeed incumbent upon us to rethink not just how we give due space to knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values, building among learners, but also what and how to assess all these aspects, keeping the breadth of assessments approach in focus. So today at this roundtable, I am joined by three of my illustrious colleagues who I would like to call drivers of change. And they are responsible for driving the curricular and assessment reform in India's National Capital Territory, Delhi. I have with me Mr. K.S. Upadhyay. He is currently uh, he's currently the secretary of Delhi's recently created Board of School Education. He was earlier chairperson of the committee which was formed by the Delhi government for the constitution of this board itself. And he has been, in his earlier avatar, members of various committees for designing curriculum, assessment, capacity building in different organizations like National Council for Education Research and Training, Central Board of Secondary Education, and National Institute of Open Schooling in India. So he brings to the table vast experience. Hopefully now we will not be thrown in another room where we don't want to go right now. So I can resume. That was about Kripashankar Upadhyayji, who is joining the discussion with me today in this session. I also have Dr. Ajay Chaube. Dr. Chaube is the chairperson of Delhi's Curriculum Development Committee. And prior to that, he headed a school. And he has authored several books and articles. The most prominent, according to me, he might disagree with me, is community schools. And today in our conversations, we will draw heavily from his experience as to how he has seen schools emerging, evolving over the years. I also have with me Mr. Parvinder Kumar. From being a school principal to a leader of a group of teachers especially mandated to reimagine learning assessment, Parvinder is the one who has created a ground for assessment reform in Delhi, I would say. So along with Mr. Upadhyay and Dr. Chaube, he would be taking the agenda of assessment reforms in Delhi forward. So as you can see, this is like that is why I said this is, I'm not saying policy maker because that's a very broad term, but here are the policy drivers with me in these sessions. And before I proceed, I would also like to thank Grace Maina, who is a Deputy Director, Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, who is also my learning circle partner at Education Policy Network, Salzburg. And I'm sure she was traveling today, but she promised that she will join the session. So I hope she would also contribute in the discussion. And I would also like to thank two of my other learning cycle partner, Renan, who is Secretary Education for Rio, Brazil, and Cayman, who is Dean China Education Innovation Institute. So we bring today a host of experience and different perspective to dwell upon this important topic that we are going to talk about. And therefore, in the next 40 minutes, we would be trying to cover three main questions. I'm not promising that we have answer to all of them, but we will try to discuss and understand this concept more as we enter into a completely new era of education reforms, at least in Delhi, learning from elsewhere and also willing to contribute to others. So what we would be basically talking about is the significance of breadth of skills in our curriculum, and what does its assessment entail. And linking upon these two, we would also be talking about what systemic change would be required to effect a shift if we were to include breadth of skills assessment, breadth of skills to make learning more holistic and assessment more meaningful. So we will be covering this range of subtopics in this discussion. So proceeding on this, I would like to straight away go to Mr. Upadhyay to set the context of today's discussion. And I would like your thoughts, sir, on why is there a need for adopting breadth of skills approach in our curricular design now? Why do you think we should be doing that at all? Is it not already?
Thank you, sir. In fact, if we see one of the core purpose of education is to make a thoughtful, responsible citizen, and so to make a learning society. And these cognitive, creative, physical, and social emotional skills are very much essential for the holistic development. Because in this present scenario of because our children are the IT natives and it's the information age, knowledge-based economy, and I am sure that everybody will not deny that learning happens everywhere. If we see the earlier context where the schools were in community and community were in the schools, the entire family, parents, and the society at large were constituting a large ecosystem of education. So in this changed circumstance and very unpredictable world, we have to have these core skills so that, and now what the youth are doing, they are changing their career aspirations. So definitely these breadth of skills have to be mandatorily the part of our curriculum design, so that we can have the task performance, engagement with others, collaborators. So these are very much essential components, and they must be integrated to our curriculum design. And the responsibility is now on the shoulders of the educator system. So definitely, we have to have these breadth of skills in our curriculum design and the entire this ecosystem of this schooling.
So thank you, Krupashankar ji. I would like to take a step back here and and expand the scope of this discussion as to what we mean by breadth of skills. Why are we talking about it? You see, in 2015, when the UN adopted Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 4 very categorically said that by 2030, education systems across the world should ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities to all. And then it set down several targets for that. Now, if you look at the first 6 targets, this is basically in terms of providing access. So access to primary schooling, access to early childhood schooling, access to vocational skills, access to universal youth literacy. But the target 4.7 talks about education for sustainable development and global citizenship. Now, from this target, the whole concept of breadth of skills started unfolding, because if you want to bring this education for sustainable development and global citizenship, then perhaps we need to focus on something more than what we have been doing that. So that is as far as the international paradigm is concerned. In year 2020, Government of India adopted, in fact, introduced new education policy. Now, I'll jump to Dr. Ajay Chaubey here. Dr. Chaubey, to what extent you see the spirit of breadth of skills percolating in the National Education Policy 2020 that the Government of India has adopted. Ajay ji, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Sarendra Sharma sir, and सभी साथियों, सभी all friends. Okay, National Education Policy 2020 envisages for some transformational change in Indian educational ecosystem, and it's talk about the education system that lays emphasis on the experiential learning along with the 21st century skills like means in all domains like core skills, generic competencies and capabilities, skills and transversal skills. We try to search the content of the skill in the National Education Policy 2020. 10 points may be considered for decoding provision for skills in these policy documents. First point is the vision for balanced education. Means no hard separation between arts and science, between curricular and extracurricular activities, between vocational and academic stream, in order to eliminate the harmful hierarchy among the different areas of learning. And second point is the reimagination of the vocational education and sensitize on the building competency. Vocational education is generally perceived to be inferior to the mainstream education and meant largely for the students who are unable to cope up with the later. This is the perception that affected the choices of the students. And it is a serious concern, and policy seeks to reimagine the vocational education, also seek to resolve the epistemic separation between knowing and doing. And third points that try to situate the skill education in Indian education system with inclusive, intro, available, and outcome-based education. And General Education Council, along with the NCRT, will prepare the education qualification framework. That will be aligned with the National Skill Qualification Framework to ease the integration of vocational education to the higher education and the school education. Fourth point is the 21st century capacity building. A holistic and multidisciplinary education will help to develop online individuals. And Charan Sharma has mentioned about this, so I'm not going to this. Fifth point is the social school internship for skill orientation and craft centric. Every student will have a fun course and during grade 6-8 that gives a survey and hands-on experience of the sampling of the important vocational context. And 6 is the professional development of a teacher in alignment with the vocational and technological needs of the country. 7th is the integration of vocational education with the academic learning with the formation of MHRD will constitute a national committee for integration of vocational education in the mainstream education, so-called mainstream education. And 8th is the job market orientation with the multi-entry exit option in the higher education. The recognition of prior 8/9, the recognition of the prior learning and alignment with the international standard. National Skill Qualification Framework will detail further for each discipline, vocation and profession. And Indian standard will be.
Sir, I will yes. Stop you here a bit and take because you laid down the range of things that the new education national education policy talks about. And it is very fascinating to see that some of the things that we have been talking about finds resonance in the policy, and you have very beautifully brought those key things. The reason I put this question here for the to you was that the first line in the national education policy itself starts unfolding the breadth of skills discussions that we are talking about. And the reason I say is, I'll quote this policy. It says, education is fundamental for achieving full human potential, developing an equitable and just society, and promoting national development. So when you talk about the whole purpose of education, which this sentence tries to encapsulate, it talks about full human potential. And that full human potential can happen only if we have, say, a range of opportunities to build knowledge, skills, attitude, and values.
Yes.
So this is where we stand. Now, Parvinder, you heard what Kripa Shankar ji said and how Ajay Chaubeji elaborated upon that. You have been responsible for creating assessment setup in Delhi's schools. Now, in your experience, tell us, where do we stand? What is the reality on the ground? How do we actually assess learning as of now? I'm not talking about what we are going to do in future. I'm basically wanting to understand where we stand right now. Over to you, Parvinder.
Well, Shailendraji, our current education system is actually predominantly economy centric. We develop our future citizens to just fit in their respective roles in the economy of the country, like as a role of doctor, engineer, or teacher. And we relied heavily on content and knowledge centric approach to teaching learning. And this requires memorization and recall of the facts. So was our assessment system. Till now, I think our assessment system was predominantly summative assessment. And where at the end of the year, we administer a pen and paper examination to evaluate the knowledge and remembering ability of the students. And we evaluated these tests on a rigid numeric scale. And frankly speaking, even the higher level of the Bloom's taxonomy, like the analysis and evaluating, the creating, are not touched to much extent. And we were just using the basic three levels, that are remembering, understanding, and application level of the Bloom's taxonomy to assess the learning. I think that was the current state of the assessment which we are doing in contemporary times. Definitely need to change this.
So to what extent, I'll build upon what you just said. We recently had an OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, conducting a study which was published by the name Beyond Academic Learning. And they basically talked about how do we measure social emotional learning among children. Now, this is a big step in the direction of expanding the assessment framework. Now, to what extent you think this report offers some ideas of what potentially could be the tools of assessing behavioral, social, emotional learning of the child to complete the entire circle, which according to you, and we all agree with it, is more knowledge and its immediate application centric. So do you think this OECD's report offers any hope or any idea to expand our assessment framework?
So definitely, the survey of social and emotional skills that conducted by OECD in 10 cities of 9 countries. The survey was basically conducted in 5 personality traits, which were further connected to 15 and I think precisely 17 social emotional skills like curiosity, tolerance, creativity, responsibility, self-control, empathy, trust, cooperation, etc. And this survey have given some striking observations. And a few of the observation endorse our facts, our beliefs, and few of the observation are really striking for us. Like the one observation I just observed in that is that all of these social and emotional skills are actually foundation of students' well-being and are very, very closely and dynamically linked with the academic achievements. And second, that is, I think, a sorry state and alarming bell for all of our educators are, that is, the survey have found that the social and emotional skills are actually showing a considerable decline, a dip, as students move from age 10 to age 15. That is infancy age to adolescence age. And we all know this is the age when the students are in our structured school system. So that is really a alarming thing. We have to consider, we have to think about this, deliberate on this, why it is happening. Our school system is taking them ahead or just dragging them backward. So my takeaway from this survey report is that the social and emotional skills strongly related to students' psychological well-being and life satisfaction and even their career aspirations. So I would say that we need to have a balanced set of cognitive and social emotional skills that is need of our. And if we want a sustainable development, then definitely we have to have a balanced sort of all the skills, cognitive as well as the social and emotional skills.
Thank you. Thank you, Parvinder. You talked about balance. I'll get back to Ajay Chaubeji on this. Ajay ji, help us understand, based upon your research, that to what extent you see that the current curricular and pedagogical approach, do you see the balance in it that Parvinder is talking about? And why should there be a situation where a child, when he or she grows, instead of being more emotionally assured, is actually becoming more tentative, as the OECD report points out? What is your understanding? What is missing currently in our curricular and pedagogical approach to build those range of skills that we are talking about?
Yeah, this 21st century significant changes are occurring related to new scientific discovery, informatization, globalization, and robotics, artificial intelligence. And this century is known as the knowledge society and knowledge economy like this, where the knowledge is the defining characteristics of all aspects of the society. And this is not the only knowledge is changing, but the knowledge itself have been changed. And the world is witnessing a new epistemology with the new epistemic assumptions on which this learning can be facilitated: socio-emotional learning, cultural learnings, and digital learnings. But the current curriculum and pedagogic approach are not apt for this new epistemological shift and this new pedagogical demand for catering, facilitating all these learnings. If you try to see that current curricular is, so it is biased towards the cognitive learning, and just they overlook the cultural and this, because it is based on the performance model, where content is more important than competency and standards like outcomes. So this is so we try to understand that there is no any coordination between. I don't say that the only one framework is sufficient for deciding about the curriculum arrangement, but the alignment and the intersectionality of this competency-based, performance-based, and this standard-based curriculum need to be done. And one of the vocational education in the world is being facilitated through the competency-based curriculum, but this model is also is diluting the skills by dividing skills into various competency. So it is important to just try to understand a balanced approach for curriculum planning and curriculum development, so that we can just align and thus situate all the areas of learning in harmonious way, in balance.
So what you say, Ajay Chaubeji, I find the echo of that in the introduction to the national education policy itself. At one point, it says education thus must move towards less content and more towards learning about how to think critically and solve problems, how to be creative and multidisciplinary, and how to innovate, adopt, and absorb new material in novel and changing fields.
Yes.
So the policy also talks about uh, reducing the content and instead focusing on building more, core skills that you can use that less content to effect more learning, to develop, to emerge as a holistic thinking individual. But Parvinder, why do you think this is not happening right now? I want you to focus more on that. And this is not the first national document which is talking about. Prior to that, National Curriculum Framework 2005, if you remember, also talked about the same thing. No educator worth his salt, his or her salt, would ever say that we don't want holistic education. But then why there is a preponderance of, say, thrust on just delivering the content and making sure that the child absorbs that? Why does that happen? And you have come straight from the school. You have been a principal of this school not long time back. So what do you see why that happens?
Shailendraji, I think there is a lack of coherence between that curriculum, that pedagogical philosophies, that teacher capacity building, and the student assessment. These are taken in three separate silos. They should be well integrated and synchronized. And all these skills which we are discussing on this platform, I think many of these skills reflect in the behavioral term and the values and the character fortitude of the students. So unless we have a joint exercise, we take all the three major things together. We have a major capacity building of our teachers and all the stakeholders. I think that is the lacking point. And so, and major concern is that in a country like India, where we are having a adverse pupil-teacher ratio, and we have the scale of our students is quite on the higher side, and that observational assessments, I think that is finding it a bit difficult. And we are looking towards some technological support which can help us in finding solutions for this. So the issue is, I think we need time and we need capacity building of our stakeholders to just go ahead and achieve this target which our policy is thinking. That's all from my side.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Upadhyay, you heard what Parvinder said in this part and earlier also when he was referring to OECD's Beyond Academic Learning report. You also heard what Ajay Chaube ji has been saying on this subject. You have had like very diversified experiences with different school system in India. I would want you also to throw some light on why we have not been able to introduce a balanced approach in our school system where knowledge, skills, attitude, values are all treated on an equal footing, if not something more as compared to others. Why there is preponderance of, say, academic or knowledge building thrust only? What do you
rightly said that Pravindraji was referring the OECD report, and in his last conversation he has told about, because in fact we have to work in the all three domains of the curricular transaction, that is the curriculum design, pedagogy, and assessment. And we have to have our teachers ready for that. So we have to heavily invest in our teachers' professional development. What we can do that, and we are doing also that, we have to link our local, national, and global context in our curriculum design. We must have the interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and cross-curricular approach, linking these breadth of skills, because it has been rightly established that these skills are very much needed for our cognitive learning also. And they supplement and complement and enhances the student performance also. So what we have to do, we have to link these to make our linking the learner profiles like thinkers, caring, principles, knowledgeable, and so on. And similarly, what we have to open the boundaries of the schools to the community, means the school in community and community to schools. As far as that pedagogy is concerned, we have to have a paradigm shift in approaches to learning and teaching. What we can do that, we have to promote that thinking skill, communication skill, research skill, social skills, and self-management skills also. And I would like to say that it is the assessment which drives the learning, because so is the assessment as is the classroom. So what we have to do, that we have to go backward by design for it. So we have to link that assessment to the learning outcomes, which promotes learning, and in the natural state of learning, because it is the ultimately teachers link the assessment, how our classroom transaction will be. So we have to link the 360-degree assessment, or means the self, peer, community, parents, society at large, survey, assessment, means the all sort of assessment we have to link at, and we have to link the all breadth of skill to integrate in it. And we have to have these means community linked projects also to link that. Because in earlier days, there was a lot of participation of the communities in that. So we have to have in all these 4 domains of that curriculum, the pedagogy, the assessment, and the professional teacher. We have to make our teachers ready for that. So definitely we have to work on these all 4 parameters for that and for this.
Thank you, Upadhyay. Dr. Chaubey, Upadhyay just mentioned, but he did not elaborate on this point, that earlier days. So what does he mean by those earlier days, and what kind of relation schools have now have or should be having vis-a-vis families, vis-a-vis communities? Because you see, there's a Chinese saying, it takes a village to raise a child. The problem that we are discussing here is it that are we expecting too much from the schools? We want schools to impart knowledge. We want schools to build values. We want schools to get the learner acquire skills. Do you think we are expecting too much from our schools, and other institutions in the societies have not taken up that responsibility which they should be taking?
Yes.
And it's important to understand this part, because unless we figure this out, probably despite putting in the policy documents and having the good intention, we may not be able to bring about those changes. What do you think?
Yes, you are right. There was a pedagogic disjoint between the family pedagogy, social pedagogy, and school pedagogy, and informal institutions pedagogy. See, the family, peer groups, the neighborhood, the society were the primary institution of socialization. A child appears on this earth as a biological entity, but their social, they are being transformed into the social entity through this process of socialization as a primary institution of socialization. And but with the growth and the subtlety and the complexity of the knowledge, these institutions are not able to just socialize the children. So the expert institutions, expert people and institutions are required. There's a school, colleges, university appears. So there was in a earlier time, there was a division. There was a division between the social pedagogy, but the skills that required in the changing time, that the world that is facing the converging crises, unprecedented challenges, socio-economic and environmental, driven by the globalization as a knowledge explosion. It's here the complex problem becomes the subtle, and that the primary institution is not able to just they lack the capability that the help children to utilize that skills, that soft skills. So that's why there is a pedagogic conflict between these pedagogical institutions like family, community, and this. And see, the family institutions were transforming the conventional skills, the community skills that were relatively the manual and observable, measurable, and but now soft skill is being very cognitive and sensual. So, and in a way, these soft skills, the community skills was encompassing various means soft skill in its size. But this is the pedagogy which we are lacking some pedagogic framework. That's why we are not able to align between them. So this is a pedagogical crisis when we are talking about the holistic education of a generation in this time.
So, Parvinder, Ajay Chaubey ji is talking about pedagogical crisis. Kripa Shankar ji earlier said that what kind of role different institutions were expected to play, and they have been playing in the past. And somehow today, in a more centralized or bureaucratization of schools, I would say, created a very narrow kind of range of expectations from the schools. Now, and Kripa Shankar ji also made a very interesting point ki it is the assessment that drives the curriculum and pedagogy, and we have all felt that all along. Now, I would want you to touch upon uh, the social emotional learning study of OECD, where it talks about the five broad domains on which they created some kind of a framework on which they assessed the social emotional resilience of children. Now, explain what those five broad domains are and how you as an assessment expert think that that could be a part of, say, a new assessment paradigm that that you along with Upadhyay ji and Ajay Chaube ji are tasked to introduce in Delhi schools. How does that help in reshaping the assessment setup?
Well, basically, Chalandar ji, the five main domain, I've just simplified the name in that just a slightly easier English. The five main domains are number one, open-mindedness, and then the task performance. The third is engaging with others, and the fourth one is collaboration, and the fifth one is, I think, emotional regulation or emotional stability. And the report itself have deliberation and have explained in very explicit way that all these domains are very much important for the students' cognitive as well as the social and emotional skills. Now, if I take it one by one, in openness, when the students is ready to welcome the other concept and other argument of a person, and he become more open to just the other aspect of that problem. So he is become more curious, he's more tolerant, he become more creative. And I think this curiosity and this tolerance and this creativity, because of this open-endedness of the child, make him a good learner. And similarly, if you just take the task performer, then it is then further we can say it responsibility and self-control. And this, I think, if students are responsible and they take responsibility of completing a task, then if they own a thing, then they can definitely they will achieve this thing. And the third, if you say that collaboration, I think this is in this VUCA world, this is the need of our. And if you have a sustainable development, then this collaboration is definitely need of our. We need to just collaborate things and just go ahead. And the last one, I think, which is for our generations, I think that is the emotional regulation and emotional stability. We should agree to disagree with something. And we should have trust and cooperation and stress resistance. Because you are not winning. You may have to just face defeats. We have to face some resistance also. So we have to just prepare our students to socially and emotionally strong. And all these things, I think all these skills are very closely, very dynamically related with that our academic, our cognitive skills. So if we can address this thing, definitely we are going to achieve what we are envisaging in our NEP and what we are thinking of in our sustainable development goal of UN. Definitely, this is the need of our.
It is so fascinating to hear this, because none of these five domains that you talked about is something that that operates in isolations. But this is like what is required for lifelong learning and to excel in anything that one does. In fact, for the living itself. And I don't see, I mean, other panelists may have their views on this, but I don't see that even for, say, knowledge acquisition, these domains or these skills is not required. I mean, open-mindedness, as you said, if I have to even learn about, say, the concept of water, So it is not only that the chemical composition of water I need to learn, I also need to learn the entire sociology and psychology of water. So my learning will never be complete unless I am able to place my say content knowledge in a larger context. So I think this approach then enhances your understanding of the subject, application of the same in our life, and play a more meaningful role in our social existence. I'll take this to Kripa Sankar ji. What do you think? I mean, what is some big shift? Because you have seen the prior model, and you are at the cusp of, say, taking us to a different approach. But in terms of taking the things that we all are discussing here, what kind of systemic change would be required? What kind of support would be needed to make this transformation possible? Not just from the state or policymakers' point of view, but also from, say, other segments of society, other institutions of society also.
Definitely, I would like to say that what exactly the Delhi government is working upon for this complete transformations and big reforms, because I congratulate the Delhi government for spending that 1/4 of budget on it. So what the sequence of reforms the Delhi government is doing about the infrastructure reforms, the curricular reforms about that happiness, EMC and Deshbhakti curriculum, which exactly integrating all 5 domains of all these breadth of skills, and more participation of community and community in schools. A lot of involvement is going on by that parents mitra like programs, and it's strengthening for their capacity building. In that segment of curricular reforms, we have established the schools of specialized educations. In fact, we have the high-end 21st century skills, the schools which completes this entire curriculum design of these breadth of skills. Similarly, the performance visual arts and the humanities. I tell you that what we are doing if I take some of example. For example, we are working for the design thinking. That also we have designed a subject for it. So it completes that makes it possible of this breadth of skill in a cognitive domain. Similarly, if we are Delhi for Ages, where the student will go and experience and learn that in fact the culture, customs, monuments, languages, everything, and then they experience it. They will go and to the places, interview them, then reflect them. And also the Delhi government has established the Delhi Board of School Education, where they reinforce the learning. They are, because as I already said, that it is the assessment which does it. So the student is being assessed in the natural state of learning, where whatever he's reflecting, whatever he's experiencing, what is he's developing in their learning profile of that, whatever that thinker, inquirer, what I let's say. So this is what, and for that we are also opening the schools for the knowledge partner across the globe. For example, in assessment for the Delhi Board of School Education, we have the Australian Council of Education Research for building our task and designing the new age assessment. For SOSEs, we are taking help of the Boston Consulting Group. So similarly, we are also working with the different, means the renowned universities of the world to go the backward way design of learning. Because our government believes that any child must not be deprived of this good quality education because of his or her birth. And we are making a complete curriculum shift, like linking this SDG goal, as I've told you earlier also, that linking the local, national, and the global perspective in that, and linking that SDG goal also. So as you took in the example of water, we are linking water of all cognitive subjects of it. So it may be of science, social science, mathematics, the volume of that. So everything we are making a interdisciplinary approach, linking with this breadth of skills. Like I said that we have developed a design thinking subject, which includes the all necessary breadth of the skills which we are talking of. So this is how we are going it, and we are making a curriculum, a complete paradigm shift for 360-degree assessment, which including all stakeholders. So exactly, we have started this reform to our school government of Delhi education system.
Great. And in fact, you also introduced 3 mindset curriculum in the school system of Delhi, precisely to build the range of breadth of skills. The happiness curriculum, which we will be talking in the next session in more detail. Apart from that, you also introduced entrepreneurship mindset curriculum and the citizenship education by the name Deshbhakti curriculum. Now, these are some of the things that I suppose you are doing to actually expand the scope of education in the school setup. And it is in this context that I've got a very interesting question that has come. I would want Parvinder to answer that. And then Kripashankar ji, if time permits, maybe I'll ask you also to touch upon that. And it's a very genuine concern. One of the participant in this breakout session, Rian Tarvin, has posed this question. What he is saying that I can't imagine you just keep assessing more without taking something else out. How do you think about that trade-off? And I completely resonate with his question, because one of the things in the school education system is you keep adding the block without taking anything out. And I often use this corollary that sometimes in our home we have accumulated so many things which we have not even bothered to touch for the last 20 years, but we don't let it go in the hope that we might need it. And the same happens in our school education system. So his concern is that if you were to simply add something more without removing something, then you will be overburdening the system, overburdening the teachers. How do you answer this, Parvinder? I think it's a beautiful question.
Sir, if you ask me that if I have an answer to this question, then I said I don't have any answer to this question. And in fact, Rain have asked my question to myself only, because this is the question which is, I think, making my night sleepless. Because our teachers are so overburdened with that work. I think they are doing fabulous job, but their work pressure is keep on increasing. But if I try to answer this question, I just try. I think I'm looking forward with the technological support, because we need some technological support, some artificial intelligence and all those augmented reality sort of support, where which can ease out the burden of our teachers. Because this is definitely a questions, I think, which is keep on ringing in our mind for the futures to come. So definitely we are looking forward, we are looking for some technical support and some technology support to just remove and reduce the pressure of the teachers.
Thank you. May I add something in it, sir?
Yeah.
For example, it is the curriculum designer to think of. For example, in our humanities, we are developing a mathematics which will lead to the research aspirations, means data interpretation and everything, making the statistical means survey, everything. Why should I teach a child that calculus to them, which is not of relevance? I have not used my sine theta and cos theta for humanity. So we can also include what is relevant. For example, for assessment, what we are doing, we are linking a community project to it. So what exactly a child is going to give the society, that matters. Are also these skills which we are talking of. So we are designing very carefully, which is relevant to that. For example, in STEM, what we are doing, they have to go for the higher research, where we are incorporating that mathematics and applied mathematics and science. So this what we can beautifully design that. Definitely something will be left, but we have to choose that something will be left, which is relevant to a child for their learning progression. So we are making this curricular shift in it.
Ajay Chaubeji, would you like to give your perspective on this matter? By including more and not thinking about what we already have, we will be overburdening the system.
Yes, we need a organizational assessment mechanism when we try to examine each and every aspect what we have accumulated, and how they are useful or not. We examine, and then the things which are not useful should be abandoned. This is a time of just minimizing the content load at everywhere
No,
sphere, not only
yeah,
classroom.
and hearing the three of you, what comes to my thought is that perhaps this question or this concern is also more profound if we see the process of assessment from the current prism, where
Yes.
there's a hierarchy. The hierarchy is that somebody who is more knowledgeable will design something which is called question paper or assessment tool, and which will be administered in a certain manner. The intent is basically to test, not to assess, actually.
Assess.
Uh,
Yes.
so if we go with that paradigm, then perhaps we will be in for disaster, because knowledge testing is okay, but when you are going to test, so for example, if I were to be assessed on my, say, gender equality, what are you going to assess me on? Are you going to assess my views on gender equality or my behavior on gender equality? So if we have to be assessed on these behavioral aspects, then I don't think our conventional pen and paper, and that is the dilemma that we have. So therefore, the entire ecosystem becomes our like assessment tool. So you have observations, you have assignments, you have a range of things that the learner should be doing, and we should be operating in that dynamic process where whatever is happening, we are doing it and assessing it. We are noticing it,
Yes.
we are observing it, and we are recording it, creating a profile. And that is what was fascinated me about the IB's process, and with whom we have now partnered in Delhi to create that 360-degree view. I mean, assessment is not a one-time affair where you
Yes.
do the marking and grading. Assessment is a continuous process. And if we imbibe that in our discourse, perhaps we will not feel that burden. So in that sense, my knowledge of mathematics also becomes a very, what you say, series of formative assessments, where it is not only the algorithm that I have learned, but also the whole concept that I have learned, where I am applying and how I am applying. So I
Yes.
think perhaps as a policy maker or the policy driver that I call all of you, we'll have to think about the process of assessment also, and that is going to then place this breadth of skills assessment more robust. If we see that from the old prism, perhaps we will be missing the bus.
Yes, sir, definitely. Or
Yes.
what we are doing also, as you said, that IB is our partner. We are assessing to get the feedback to transfer our curriculum design in the classroom. That is the feedback. So this is not that we are assessing a child. We are assessing the entire spectrum of the curricular transaction.
Absolutely, and that is what the I think that's the point at which I would like to end this beautiful session. I would have loved to have this conversation going on for another hour or so, but that is the point. It is not the assessment of the child, because it is the assessment of everybody involved in that. We all have a collective responsibility. So there cannot be one hierarchical tool which is being thrust upon the child to basically test what you have learned, and so that I can certify you. From that point of view, I think we will have to go back to a more holistic 360-degree assessment. Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed, and we would like to have a feedback of all the participants who have been so
Thank you, sir.
actively engaged in the discussion. Thank you
Thank
so
you, Shailendra.
much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.